welcome to Mondays with Mira, and today I'm delighted to be showing you Tyrannosaurus Drip by the fabulous Julia Donaldson, and she's most famous for the Gruffalo and a ton of other wonderful rhyming picture books. If you look from Mondays with Mira, Room on the Broom, Room on a Broom or Room on the Broom, I have another video review of one of her rhyming books, and this one's illustrated by David Roberts, who does a lovely, lovely job, and he's using watercolor here, and he does it very skillfully. Because I don't have much room in my bookshelves, I'm trying to review books that I get from the library and other sources. So this one, as you can see, is from the Sacramento Public Library, but I want to show it to you because it's got this delightful little, very, very subtle illustration on the end sheet. And if you remember, the end sheet is what holds a hardbound book together. This is your classic plot-driven, well, it's not your classic plot-driven book, but it is a plot-driven book. In a prehistoric river, in a prehistoric swamp, lived a herd of duck-billed dinosaurs who liked to stand and chomp. And they hooted up with rivers, and they hooted up with reeds, and they hooted up with bellyfuls of juicy water weeds. Okay. So this is what's known as a monochromatic illustration, in that it's all different shades of green with a little bit of blue for this character right here. And what the illustrator does that I love is he brings in all these patterns that just gives it a really contemporary look, and that they just add to the fun. And they also kind of play upon the organic shapes. So it's very curvy shapes that contrast with the much straighter shapes of the trees in the swamp. Now across the rushy river on a hill the other side. So let me talk a little more about pattern right here. It looks like he's just drawn in with something sharp into the paper to get these little white scratchy effects. And then he's got these wonderful, hatching lines for shadows. And then here he's indicating volume, or I'm not sure what it is, pattern in the trees that just makes it really yummy looking. Oh, and then here I wanted to point out the beautiful water, the repeating organic shapes there. And the way the water, as the waves go behind each other, they get darker. So that makes it look more dimensional. And what else did I want to say? Oh, and just how fun the graveyard bones are. So let's read this. Now across the rushy river on a hill the other side lived a mean Tyrannosaurus with his grim and grisly bride. And they shouted, "Up with hunting!" and they shouted, "Up with war!" and they shouted, "Up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur." Here's a problem, isn't it? But the two Tyrannosauruses, so grisly, mean and grim, couldn't catch the duck-billed dinosaurs because they couldn't swim. And they muttered, "Down with water," and they muttered, "Down with wet," and they muttered, "What a shame that bridges aren't invented yet." So it's pretty fun. Now a little Compsognathus, but for short we'll call her Comp, found a duckbill egg and stole it from a nest beside the swamp. And she swam with it and ran with it and murmured, "Clever me." And won't the baby Comps be thrilled with duckbill egg for... And then, great page turn, because you fill in the word, it's probably going to be tea, which doesn't really work so well with an American audience, does it? Because dinner is called tea in the colonies. So these are a series of spots or vignettes. And it's kind of hard to pull those off without them looking spotty. And one of the things that works here is just this, the variation in scale. Generally in an illustration, you want to have one thing, if possible. It's called the hero image. And then everything else serves that image. The other thing that's really great is the use of diagonals, which destabilizes the picture and makes it much more exciting. It also guides your eye as to where the artist wants you to look. As you can guess, the Tyrannosaurus takes the egg, because they're not very bright, and puts it with the rest of her eggs. And here we go. Out-hatched babies 1 and 2 as perfect as could be, but Mother T was horrified by baby number 3. And she grumbled, he looks weedy, and she grumbled, he looks weak, and she grumbled, what long arms, and look, his mouth is like a beak. He just needs feeding up, said Dad, and gave the babe some meat. The first 2 gulped and guzzled, but the third refused to eat. And he said, I'm really sorry. And he said, I simply can't. He said, this meat looks horrible. I'd rather eat a plant. And look at the drama in this. So, you know, we've got that scale thing happening with these guys. And how exciting they are. And it's not quite the single hero image, but it is that sort of big, bold image contrasting with much smaller images. And here we've got this facing this way, leading us to turn the page. A plant, yelled Mom in horror, and Dad said, get a grip. His sisters found a name for him, Tyrannosaurus Drip. And they shouted, up with hunting, and they shouted, up with war, and they shouted, up with bellyfuls of duck-billed dinosaur. And so then it develops into this terrific story about this character who obviously doesn't fit in. And he's, you know, fish out of water. He's totally not a part of this family. He's a peaceful vegetarian. Isn't that just beautiful? Just have a look at the gorgeousness of that. And just how beautifully that watercolor has been handled. And then check out the lovely line work happening, for example, down the bottom here, where there are those little nautiluses, and then the little spirals, and the little cross-hatching, and then these lovely organic half circles, and just very painterly, even though the dinosaurs are somewhat cartoony, it's also very fine art and very contemporary pop art and very painterly, which is a really interesting combination. So, you know, do you think the book is going to end here and just end happily ever after? I don't think so. There's got to be more. And indeed there is. There's a storm and a branch falls across. And Drip, our little protagonist, saves the day. Because even though he's little and he's peaceful, he's smart. And I'm not going to give it away. I will share the pictures. But I want to encourage you to go out and buy this book because it's just a real delight, and there's lots to learn from it. Well, for starters, working with pattern for the illustrators. Check out the pattern on that log that's fallen down, and then check out the pattern in the water. You know, look at these, how it's so subtle, but it makes such a difference. It's just beautiful. And then here, you know, the shadows are equally as important. And then another thing that I would encourage you guys to do, the illustrators here, is to squint your eyes and have a look at the negative space compared to the positive space. And the negative space is basically the space that isn't showing what the action is. So all this water here, that would be your negative space. And if your negative space is pleasing, then chances are your positive space will be as well. Also check out any kind of geometrical shapes, diagonals, verticals, horizontals, spirals, things. This is a pretty common theme that I've seen throughout this book, where they're sort of like back-to-back mirroring each other. And it's a very pleasing shape. And here we've got our little vignettes again that move the story forward. And then we see leading up to the big climax, and check out that log again. And it's almost got an Edward Gorey quality in how David Roberts does the line work on the tree, on the log, and in many elements throughout. Guess what happens? Lovely splash. It's hard not showing you the okay, I'm going to show you this, but I'm not going to show you the twist at the end. So look at the light and shadow in that. Look at the line work. Look at the limited palette. And then the contrast between these big, ugly, hot-colored T-Rexes and the coolness of everything else in here as they sail away. So just lovely, lovely, lovely. Great dragonflies. Here's the little comp come back. It's just a fun story. But it also teaches a lot of language skills. And it teaches about, having your own place, and that there's somewhere that you fit in. That there really is no place like home. So I'd like to say thank you, Julia Donaldson. Thank you, David Roberts. And thank you, 5 Sons. Bye.